Where to begin? Okay, so as announced, on the last stream, we are gonna talk real quick about what has happened over the last, I think, 3 or 4 years here at TBS since COVID. 2019, yeah.
Yeah.
August of 2019 is when this whole saga started. We are now nearly August of 2023, so it's been a rough 4 fucking years. As some of you may know, TBS was started by 3 people, and it was kind of founded on a handshake agreement. Pretty soon we outgrew our plans of staying in Switzerland. It was quite clear that in Switzerland there wasn't going to be any manufacturing or production or success of the company of any kind. Running an electronics company in Switzerland in a niche market is a big ask. I kind of just took the initiative and left for Shenzhen area, right? TBS moved to Hong Kong. We weren't even incorporated in Switzerland. You don't really have to be. Most of the shit just ran off of my private account. Drove me to my hotel, which was right around the corner of our first office. So in the next morning I woke up, took a dump, went out, and just walked into the first real estate place. In Hong Kong, there's these shops everywhere where you can just walk in and say
a bunch of agents in there just waiting.
Yeah, just waiting for business.
But hang on.
Now we are where we're going to start our story. So this is why it's going to take a while. Beginning of COVID, the first guy started to break, I would say. Plus, then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So that kind of lit the whole thing on fire. And the guy resigned or wanted to leave, exit the company. He was in charge of the software of Crossfire. So that's a big guy to lose, right? Or at least a lot of knowledge that is going to get lost. General concern about who we're going to hire to replace this, and then COVID hit, and so you can't hire anybody to replace this lack of knowledge. So here we are. Used to be 3, now there's 2. And along with that, there were also political turmoil, or there was already political turmoil in Hong Kong, which is going to play a very important role for the next chapter of this story. So the first chapter basically is founder wars. Not really, but whatever. One guy down, first chapter closed, right? Crossfire, software lead gone. The political turmoil turned into a national security law, which, Google it if you're interested. Some kind of a law that is supposed to foster patriotism, to put it nicely. And plus COVID and restrictions that didn't make sense to everybody. Travel restrictions, they were just lifted a fucking 6 months ago or something, right?
Yeah.
Or 5 months ago.
Less than that, yeah.
Actually less, 4 months ago. Anyway, we had the longest and the dumbest and one of the strictest restrictions surrounding COVID.
Yeah, we were the last place to have the mask rule.
Yeah. One of the first places to have the mask rule, one of the last places to remove it, one of the longest places with travel quarantine to all countries. COVID, national security law, and then post-COVID or in between COVID, chip crisis, right? Or chip supply crunch, whatever you want to call it. So we were fucking balls to the walls, just making sure that we could make something, right? All along this time, and even before that time, I had something felt off within the company. We weren't getting stuff done. You know how you feel when you're swimming as hard as you can, but you're not moving forward? Because obviously because you have the wrong technique, right, or something like that. But
because you can't swim.
Yeah, because you can't, or maybe because you're wearing baggy pants or whatever. It just felt like that, right? And I just never fuck, like I just didn't understand it. I didn't have the time to deal with it, and I just never really had the time to like take a step back and look at the fucking issues in great detail. So yeah, chip supply, massive fucking issues. Like our lead times went from 4 weeks to like 45 weeks and up to like 80 weeks at the peak. And we were like paying, instead of like $3, we were paying the $30 for the STM32 and all these kind of like fucking nonsense stuff, right? So like all of our developers were basically focused on rewriting software to make it work on other chips, re-layouting boards to make them work with chips that were just no longer available. So that's what's happening. Like poaching is happening. So people are resigning. People are leaving Hong Kong to go to other places, staying with TBS or not staying with TBS, like both fucking cases. And at one point, 80% of our engineering workforce before COVID was no longer here, and that was like within a year. And things just got progressively worse, like within the company, because like we couldn't release any new products. There was just nothing to be fucking made. Like people were leaving, so we had to retrain new guys to enter the scene. We had to find new guys, we had to hire new guys, and then within that shit, like especially during COVID, there were scams and just like people like applying for jobs that they didn't even fucking need, and then like not showing up after they had signed the paperwork, and just all kinds of fucking like every like I'm telling you, like every fucking thing that could have happened. Actually, yeah, until last week, I thought like at least the fucking like we didn't get hit by sanctions, and it just gets exponentially worse the worse things are going, right? So like just picture like main software guy and longtime business partner leaving TBS. I'm already like what I think is on the floor, right? Then shortly after that, main software guy working on Crossfire resigns. I'm like, holy fuck, what the fuck is going on? The tracer guy resigns, right? Or leaves, whatever. And we are now at around end of 2021, early 2022. As I get more and more involved in the hardware development, or more and more, not really involved, but interested in it and questioning it, and more involved in the production side of things, I realize what's going on, okay? And at that moment, because the problem was the other 50%, I don't really have a choice, right? Because it's a handshake agreement, more or less. I mean, it was on paper at that time, by that time. But it's still like, I don't have the alone say in the company. I mean, or at least I shouldn't. On paper I do, all right? Because CEO has the final say. But I shouldn't, and it's not within my nature to go against what I shouldn't do. And like we have to get an agreement. We have to, we have to move the office, and like we have to agree on something, right? Like what are we gonna do? And at this point, to be quite blunt with you, it feels like the other party is sabotaging the company, blocking decisions that have to be made. Yeah. So now we're in a new place. Everything's starting to ramp up. Everything's starting to fucking like beautiful, right? And then came the fucking big hammer. I remember it very, very vividly because Wayne, Mike Chin, and our two customer support guys, who I'm not going to name just for privacy reasons.
We were having a meeting.
We were having a meeting. And then my bank calls me. And they go, all of your funds are locked. We cannot tell you why. And I look over and the guy's not sitting on his chair. And that was when it fucking like, uh-oh. And the thing that was happened was that a wind-up petition had been filed. A wind-up petition is a forced liquidation of a company. Very first thing I did, I still remember this to this fucking day. I run and I unplug the internet. And like that seemed like the sanest thing that I could do at the time, because it felt like fucking we are being invaded. So things are getting very, very serious, I would say, at this point.
Oh yeah.
At least for me. In a fucking situation where a court date is set, which...
That was like 2 to 3 months or something? 2 months?
2.5 months.
Yeah.
From that phone call on. A phone call, a deadline was set, a court case was going to be happening, where I would basically have to defend TBS from being liquidated. Here we are, basically. 2 months to go. This happened in early February 2023. So, okay, now my lawyers tell me there's 3 outcomes to this. First one is fight it in court for years, literally for years, maybe a year, singular, but at least a year, while having no bank accounts. And anything that I pay comes out of my pockets. Second possible outcome is an agreeable resolution. One party takes over, the other party fucks off. Third outcome is liquidation. It looks like the company's going to get wound up, and we are basically simply like going back and forth in the final weeks, not getting anywhere, to be quite honest. And I basically had already expected that my company was going to no longer exist. Like I already had, I didn't have flights booked, but I had plans made of booking flights. The government would have come in, they would have looked at everything like, oh, popcorn machine, we can sell this for that much. Oh, old Unifies, we can sell this for exactly $0 fucking dollars, so it's going to get thrown out. Oh, Crossfire intellectual property, we're going to try and sell that to somebody, right? And like, who's going to buy Crossfire intellectual property? Because of all of those personnel changes, only staff know about it, so they would have to hire those staff, but those staff are like tied to other projects, and they're gonna... If you look at TBS as a liquidation asset, it is fucking worthless. It is completely worthless compared to what it really is, right? We managed to find an agreement, I would say not at the last hour, but at the second last hour. It was probably the most risky move that I've ever made in my entire life, like financially speaking, because like I said, it felt like extortion. So the amount that was paid really felt like extortion at the time. I don't want to say like how it feels right now. Like everything is much better. I'm in a much better place mentally and physically, and perhaps also financially. But at that time, it really felt like extortion. So a deal was made. Company was taken over. The deal was signed April 20th. So I've been running this company solo now for about 4 months. We managed to turn the business around substantially. We managed to turn around the production substantially. We have developed in the last 4 months. Like not fully developed, but the hardware is completely like designed. More products than we have developed in the 5 years prior. In the pipeline are several different products. Like there is a lot of people, or well, not really a lot of people. Some people came back that previously left TBS. I think we're like 10 people more now.
Is that? Yeah.
Yeah. So we've grown by like 30% in the last 4 months. And we will continue to grow. We are hiring, we are pushing, and we are I'm motivated as fuck. But that was basically the story of how I gained control over TBS.